Hey, Donnie.
Hey, Dave, how you doing, buddy? How are you?
Good. First up, yeah, I'm fine. First up is the status on our upgrade over at the Ninth Street pump.
Ninth Street Pump. We did get we got a finished set of plans from Bayland. We've been going back and forth for the last couple of weeks. We got a complete set of plans. All I need I talked to Carol on the phone the other day. We're going to sit down in the next few days, first part of next week, and get a scope of work to Stacy so she can go ahead and put out the RFP. It's kind of pretty much mirror image of Fifth Street. Two pumps, increasing size, going over the wall like we talked about, discharge coming up and going right over the wall. The only difference would be with the type of backflow preventer. We do have a check valve in Ninth Street now, but every once in a while that thing will get stuck open, so it allows water to come back in from the bay. So we're looking at maybe putting a WAPRO, like when we went over to the National Harbor to that stormwater show. The
StormCon.
Yeah, StormCon, right, there you go. The rep that we met over there, they had them on display. I don't know if y'all remember or not, but the one type valve that was over there. So that, and then we're going to have that as a, depending, because I think that might be costly just because of the installation of it, not only the valve, but we're going to put that as A, B bid items. Like A would be the pump station, pumps, control panel, everything. And B would be the check valve and installation, would be a bid alternate.
Hey, Donnie, a quick question. Is that the new valve, can it operate when there's a heavy sand content in the water?
I'm actually getting the rep. We had a new rep since we met the guy over at StormCon. And this guy's from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He's meeting me tomorrow at 9 o'clock because I want to meet him on site before we make that decision too, and show him exactly what we have. And then we're planning on putting it where the Jersey wall is there on Atlantic Avenue. Like you actually come back into pavement and take a section of the existing pipe out and install the check valve back that far. So hopefully they'll be far enough back where the sand won't affect it as much maybe. But I'm going to have him come out. He was a new rep. He just called me out of the blue, luckily. And I said, we need you down here right away. And he was in Chicago last week, but he's coming up tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So we're going to.
Yeah, the sand content would really tear up the pump impellers pretty quickly. So we really got to make sure it's not going to happen. Yeah.
That problem too. Also there, Gary, like you said, the sand's a real problem. But when it comes over the wall, like it's been lately, it seemed like it's been a high tide the whole month. But we get all that wave action, we get the silt on the road, and then that gets in there, and that is a problem for us there.
Yeah.
But we have the same type pump, the flight pumps with the hardened impellers on them. So we're trying to get the best type impeller to handle that we can. So hopefully.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, and we're upgrading from 5 horsepower to 8.5 horsepower there. So I think the gallons per minute off the top of my head is like 1,100 gallons a piece, like 2,000 total for both pumps running at the same time, where they were 600, right around 600 gallons a minute. And with the wear and tear on the pumps, we were probably only getting about 300 gallons a minute. So we did do a good, kind of like a semi test, because the Godwin pump that we have there now as a temporary pump does around 1,200 gallons a minute. And that thing's been keeping up when it pumps, has been doing pretty well there. So I think that will be capacity wise. I think we'll be in good shape for a while, unless we get the tidal action, which nothing, I don't think will stop.
Okay.
With the one, like we had 3 weeks ago, we had that event where we had the southeast wind come right up the bay and 18 inches of water everywhere. So that was a little different. But this whole month, it's been a weird winter, because usually the winter we get the northwest wind and the low tides, but it seemed like we've had tides that have been unusually high, 4 or 5 days in February already, at least 4 or 5 days.
Anything
Anybody
you
else?
need from us? I mean, anything you need from us? Carol?
We're going to get maybe like Carla or whoever would want to come in on that, just to get the scope of work ready. We have the plans, we have the specs in the plans, they're written right on the plans, but just to get a scope of work out. Carol volunteered, that's why I said her, and she helped with the Fifth Street one, but we can when we get that together, we can circulate it, email it around, or, let me know how y'all, if anybody else wants to come over and chime in on that, that's great.
Just so
I can even-
you're gonna follow the Fifth Street template kind of idea?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Okay,
That's what I had in mind, to make it easy to copy and everything.
Sure,
Great. So that,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
kind of follow that template. Yep. We'll put it out. We're advertised for 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll be able to award in April's council meeting. I don't know.
Do you have any contractors you're thinking about?
Yeah, we've got 3 or 4 that already have looked. A couple of them been over there to help with the cleanup, and then they do stormwater stuff. And then, we got our pump station contractors. Calvert County had a couple do some pump station work recently. So we got, a good list of contractors local that we're looking at. That's about everything on 9th Street that I can think of.
Okay.
What we got up next, Dave?
The grant applications, if there's any update. So, I'll look to Tom, I guess, to give us an update on that.
Sure. Just the recent past, I had submitted 2, one for the Watershed Assistance Grant Program and another for what's called Department of Natural Resources Outcome 3. They're both very similar in that they were trying to develop rain garden areas over at 5th and Greenwood and what y'all call the alley, Greenwood Avenue, as well as the underground cistern and permeable pavers at the parking lot at 5th and Bay. If I recall, it was for $100,000 for the design and engineering of them. The next thing that's kind of on the docket is next Friday, Calvert County is assembling people to talk about with DNR what would be the most useful conversation to have. How can these grants be the most impactful for the communities? And I have no idea if I'm one of 30 people speaking. I think they got about 20 people attending. So, but that's more of the county hosting it. No grant directly associated with it, but it's always good to be heard and kind of speak up on behalf of the group. The other applications that are in process right now, one is less related to the flood mitigation committee, but March 4th is due one for the heritage area. You're part of the Southern Maryland Heritage Area. That one is to promote, protect natural and cultural resources, to promote tourism development, right? So it's a bit of a balancing act. North Beach doesn't really want to be overrun. It's not Disneyland, but how can we support more amenities at Wetlands Overlook Park, Walton Reserve, if there's any room for them, the waterfront, but it has to tie to the natural resources. The next one after that is a bit more related to the flood committee, and that's the March 7th. It's called Green Streets, Green Jobs, Green Towns, because green everything, right? And that is, we're potentially proposing redesign and engineering for the old planter beds that are along the waterfront by the boardwalk. I've not really dove into that one yet because it's third on my list of grant deadlines. But the idea would be how can they be much more useful for addressing stormwater concerns, since they're starting to look a little bit old and tired. No offense to the planter beds, but it's kind of the consensus we've all heard. So any questions that comes out of all that? That was 5 different grants there. So
Any sense, and I've probably asked you this before, Tom, I apologize if I have, any sense when we might hear some sort of status on the first 2 on those?
yeah,
water systems?
March or April, but like everything, if I'm wrong, it's because I didn't find out in March or April because they didn't tell us.
That's
But,
all right.
yeah, usually they reach out to Joanne Stacy or myself, but usually what I do is send a polite message to show that we're very earnest about these grants and really hoping we win, and just kind of keep them, keep us on their minds. I think that's about it, unless like I said, not too many specifics to it. These are, I wouldn't say we're in between, but right now is more of a writing and collecting resources time than it is. That's kind of it for March through March.
I just popped in to say, Tom, the tree committee and myself support the Southern Maryland Heritage Grant. And we're looking forward to working on that with you or giving you input on that. And we also are interested in the flower beds along the waterfront becoming safer spots for different kinds of small native trees to be planted and shrubs in the future, like tree vault type things. So we could get more information. The tree committee's interested in getting information about that idea.
Whatever creates green streets, green jobs, and green towns, yeah, will be incorporated. I just follow the script. I like all those, and whatever can help address the stormwater. You'll all probably be hit up for letters of support somewhere along the way in the next couple of weeks as well. Yeah, it's kind of where things are at.
Any
Thank
other?
you for all your work on this.
I'm sorry.
Go, sorry.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I just said thank you, Tom and Flood Committee, for all your work on this.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Tom, I was just going to ask if there's anything that any of us could pull together for you for the grants. I mean, you do have a lot of background stuff from our prior material.
Well, the next one that's sort of hot on the docket is mostly Stacy's already pulled cost estimates for something like a pavilion. I just have to make sure they're accurate, but I admit I've got one that's due Thursday for a different organization. So that one's kind of like now front and center on my mind for the next, I don't know, 72 hours. But yeah, I'll be happy to make a little bit of a to-do list if folks are available. So.
Yep. Well, send her out, see what happens.
Get the deal.
Donnie, the next one, unless anyone has any questions, was something Lauren wanted to put on the agenda, was sort of an assessment, I guess, of, that storm that you mentioned that we had, and, what it did to the berm, and what we on 7th Street and on Hatch's Corner.
Yeah, we've been recording, and I want to thank Bob. Bob Gray's been a real big help to me, because every storm, everything that happens now, he's my man on Annapolis Avenue, including with y'all. He chimes in on some of the flood committee meetings, but he put a rain gauge up on his own. But he's been recording for me a lot when the water is coming down Annapolis from the 7th Street end. But the storm that we had, that Dave was talking about, we talked to Bayland the other day. We were talking about something else, but they said that was the 3rd highest tide that we had in the area. And since they've been keeping data, the recent data, and I didn't ask them exactly when that went back to, but we had one, if y'all remember, like a couple of years ago in October, that overtopped the berm. That one was a little bit higher. It was one, and I don't remember exactly when she said, but this was a 3rd on the list that in the area, in the bay, of the actual tidal height. And as you all know, that causes issues. And along with that, we had about 3 foot, 4 foot, I'd say 4, maybe 5 foot, even wave action coming over the seawall. So of course, when we get that action down at that area, the pumps are pretty much recycling. So they're not doing anything but run and burn electricity. There's not a whole lot we can do about that because of the amount of water that came over the wall. I think, I forget off the top of my head, but that pump ran at least 15 hours when it was running that day. And, it pumped all it could, but it just can't keep up. We had 18 inches or so water in the 9th Street area. I know coming into work, the tide, it was flooded everywhere you looked. It's like Seagate, the normal areas when the tidal flooding, it went across the road there almost at the Seagate community by the North Beach Fire Department, all up in that's probably the highest I've seen it in the fire department parking lot that I've seen in recent memory. It was all flooded in that area. So when we get that type of situation, it's not much that we can do. We have to wait. Tides went down. We were able to clean it up. We hired that Stormwater Solutions, who has a sweeper truck. We got them. Luckily, we were able to clean it up in a couple of days, but that causes major havoc. That wave action actually moved the Jersey wall right there at 7th and Atlantic again. There was so much force that it actually misaligned the Jersey wall again, and that hadn't been done since we reinstalled the new ones there. So pretty heavy wave action, pretty high tides. So unfortunately, for those who live right there, then I think they've been having coastal flood warnings, it seemed like to me, every other day, so that was a bad one. That was kind of predicted, and it was hard to keep up with. We have some pretty interesting video of the wave actually coming to the wall right by the pump there, and it was just nonstop for several hours. So,
And Bob's showing us a picture there.
the only thing I can add, I can add to that is
That's the sign on the end of Annapolis Avenue at the berm.
right.
And the horizontal line is from the debris of the water.
Wow.
What did you have, Bob? Right at your fence, you had about 18 inches, 2 foot of water in your yard on Annapolis. Didn't you?
Yeah, I had 19 inches at the fence, at the sidewalk.
So that's probably the highest I've seen in recent memory for a while there. So,
It's all the water that came from Carola's house. I've seen her videos.
right,
I think it just
Send it
goes
down
between
there.
your two houses back and forth.
right.
Right.
So, that's a situation where, I think they're right with the global warming, rising sea level, whatever we got going on, but that causes havoc, and I'm not quite sure in that area with the elevation that it is, what we can do about that. We had a couple of similar tides this week, but we luckily didn't have the wave action, so we didn't have as many issues because we didn't have the water coming over the seawall. Baylands report.
Your pumps did keep up with everything that was running down Annapolis Avenue.
I said, well, when the tide went back down to a somewhat manageable level, then the pump, would keep up with that. So that's why I'm pretty confident in the pump selection for 9th Street. Hopefully, that it will do all it can do. But when we, get back down to a halfway decent tide or wave action, dies down a little bit there.
There seems a lot of
Donnie,
650.
should we,
Gary or
ahead.
Carol or one or the other. No. Go ahead, Carol.
should we, I think somebody, maybe it was the mayor, created like a tracking log or something a while back for us to sort of keep track of all the different storms and what kind of like damage or level of water rise that we have. Should we maybe revive that and try to keep, is there value in keeping track of that stuff? It might be good for Tom's
Yeah,
grants
It's definitely
applications.
value. And then I
Is there
like keeping
value
it
in that?
because, I definitely think it's value. Bob's been good about sending me stuff, and I do have a folder, but we were like, it was 3 or 4
Right.
different conversations about putting it on My Coast because it's a My Coast thing where you can put pictures of flooding. But if we keep an internal one, that does 2 things. It
Yeah.
helps us with the grant, 2 or 3 things. Helps with the grants, reminds, but you hear a lot of times, oh, it always floods down North Beach. But that kind of also, one good thing about that, you can show, no, actually we had a high tide, but the street didn't get flooded on this date. We had a high tide, we can actually record how many actual flood events. Cause I think that one there was probably the worst we've had since the one 2 years ago. To you, Carla, from living there. I mean, we've had,
Well, we had, I would say that's one of the worst since we've had since that October 2021 storm. Or whenever that
Right.
one was, yeah. Well,
'Cause we
we
do
had
have
a
some-
spreadsheet. Yeah, sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I can dig up that spreadsheet, because I think we had one, and revive it, and maybe there's a couple of like proof points we want to put on there, Bob's measurements, and maybe a couple other spots around town where we, sort of just keep an eye on impacts or something like that.
That's a great idea. And if you would like, I'd like to have somebody that
I'll
would
revive
remind
that.
me. Yeah, that'd be great. And you revive that and then remind me like after the events that we record the data, because we're good at the pictures and this and that, but I'm doing cleanup and everything, but it'd be nice
Right.
to make sure we record the data.
Well, I'll try to initiate it each time we have a storm, so you shouldn't have to remember.
Yeah, admittedly, it's not really guidance, but generally speaking, whenever you can have better data than your competition, which is every other town and community, right? You
Right.
just look like you're more ready, willing, and able to respond. And again, I know that's really generic, but so yeah, if whatever you can collect, even if it's half the storms, you're still half the storms more than everybody else. So,
All right, well, we don't do half, we're going all in.
all right, good. I'm glad this is recorded. Sweet.
What were you gonna say, Gary? Do you have a question, Gary?
Well, yeah, I just noticed there's a lot of sand in the corner. So that what the sand seemed to be being brought in with the waves and deposited. Is what is going on? On Hatch Corner.
Gary, you were awful static filled there.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you were saying. I don't know if anyone else did. They want to try again.
I'll try again. Can you hear me now? Is that okay?
That's
Yeah,
better.
that's better. I can only hear every other word, Gary.
Okay. Well, I was just noticing when I arrived after the storm, there's a lot of sand shifted around the Hatch Corner there, and I was just wondering. It looked like the waves are just bringing in lots of sand right over the barriers there.
Yeah, we've got a large amount of sand that actually was deposited by the clock on the boardwalk there. We
Yeah.
had to get a crew to come in and actually had, like 5 or 6 guys, took them half a day just to shovel that off the boardwalk. So we got the southeast wind and we did get the advantage of getting sand back on the beach, but it was in the, it's good and bad. So we did get some sand in there for sure from that storm.
Okay.
Donnie, are there need to be any repairs done to the berm, or is that
The berm looks okay. I think what Lauren was mentioning was the living shoreline that was built in like 2015 over at Walton's Beach there. That's taken a hit with all the storms. Did pretty good up until about 2018 or 19, but we've had so many tidal and storm and heavy wave action events to where the grasses they planted, that's taken a real beating over to living shoreline. That was just north of 10th, what would be 10th Street there, out there towards the wall, towards the berm, but it's not part of the berm itself. The berm is hadn't been damaged. And luckily, that's behind the breakwaters enough to where the berm itself structure is still pretty intact. But the living shoreline that's right out in the wave action, that's taken a beating over the last 2 or 3 years. And that's about all I had on that. Dave, you got we open for new business yet, or did you have any?
Yeah,
else
that's
on
it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was taking notes here.
No, you're good. No
Yeah,
problem.
any new business or anything that
What-
our guest
What
would
I
like
did want to bring up to the committee is I had a couple good things happen in the last couple of weeks. 7th Street, we kept talking about 9th and we got that pretty much in design now. 7th Street, I met with an engineer on site last week. Showed him what we kind of want to do now at 7th Street. We put a priority on putting the tide flex valve at 7th Street first, because we know it's going to take more time to not maybe design the pump station, but to get that pump station installed. And that's going to be expensive because we don't have an existing structure. That's going to involve, cutting a big chunk out of the road there, putting some sheet piling, having to dewater, install a whole new concrete structure and everything else. But we do have an engineer working on that. Tomorrow when the rep comes out from Waypro, I'm going to take him to 7th Street and we're going to make that design maybe 2 phases and try to get the installation of the check valve to be done first and see if that can be done without tearing up the road and, minimal, but we'll have that in 2 phases maybe. We do have some money left in the budget for 7th Street for this year. So I'm going to try to use up, get what we can, our money's worth out of this year's budget. And the pump station might fall in next year's, but at least we'll get a backflow preventer in that 7th Street area. So that's kind of what we are shooting for 7th Street there. The design of the pump station itself will be similar to 9th. A couple pumps in there. That collection system is a lot. 9th is not huge, but 7th is even a little bit smaller. So we might size, we'll see what the size requirements, but I'd say between 5 and 8 horsepower probably would be sufficient for there. We also were looking at, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a question, just purely of ignorance. So on 7th Street, is the primary concern getting rid of stormwater rather than sucking bay water and pumping that out? What the objective for adding the 7th Street again? Remind me, what, is it a stormwater problem for the,
It's a tidal problem at 7th Street, Gary.
Yeah.
You're breaking up a little bit, but it's a tidal problem. We have a discharge pipe there. It's 27 by like 42-inch elliptical, and it turns into a 36-inch pipe going right out in the bay. But that one there on the plans, it shows existing check valve. I can't believe it's a check valve there. I've never seen it. We've never been able to pump down the level enough to see, but to me, it appears just an open pipe. So when we
Yeah.
have when we
Yeah.
have the tides come up, the bay water is just coming back up and it's going reverse, heading down towards 9th Street. Bob has a couple of good videos
Yeah.
where it's running like a waterfall down
Yeah.
there.
why is
So
that
that's
even
mainly-
necessary? Why is that even necessary to have that?
I guess if you had a hurricane and you had a high enough level, you might get some discharge there back in the day. Now it's a good question. We can look at that too, whether that's doing, we got a collection system. It starts kind of at Mexico restaurant there, and it just
Yeah.
picks up a couple of inlets right in that area. And I guess it used to provide drainage there when the tide was down a little bit more maybe, but now it's more or less, water coming in, nothing going out to me.
Yeah.
It's catching the rainwater because the Mexico right at that intersection is pretty low. So I don't know if we didn't have anything at all there to be pumped out, whether you would get, if you got 2 inches of rain, you might have standing water in that intersection.
Mhm.
Where if we put a pump station there, you might be able to pump out, but it's just going to be expensive to do that for that little bit of, water pumping out. That's why
Yeah.
we're thinking if we shut that off, we need to shut it off first and then evaluate it and see, do we need a pump station there maybe?
Mhm.
Or like you
Okay.
said, do we need a permanent shut off, just where we don't have any discharge there?
Yeah.
If you had a hurricane and maybe you had a foot or two of water in that intersection, it might help when the tide eventually went down.
Yeah.
But other than that, you know what I mean? We're gonna like once we get the cost of the Waypro check valve, putting it in there, we might, and then I might have the engineer same time run it simultaneously. Look at how about if we just block this thing off totally? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
So that's
Because
not
Yeah. Because originally that whole section was for discharge, right?
right.
Yeah. And so if we're no longer discharging under the bay, why even have it there?
Yeah. You'll get times when it's very rare, but when the tide goes out and you can see the concrete, top of the pipe. I've never seen it below the pipe there. So gravity wise, we're not getting anything. You're definitely gonna have to put pumps if you want to get anything coming out of there. But
Yeah.
mainly that's to stop anything from coming back in.
Mhm.
And then also, we were looking at, we have some ARPA money and some money. We got a bad section from just north of your house, Gary, for lack of a better term, Hatch's Corner there, where the breakwaters come into the existing boardwalk up to 7th Street, where it's minimal riprap or rock protection there. And every time we get a storm like we did 3 weeks ago or whenever it was, we take a chance on that, losing that railing again. It undermines the flower beds along the boardwalk there. We have a sewer line, 8-inch sewer line there that serves all those houses from 7th Street to 5th Street there. That's right underneath that same area. So we're looking at getting a consultant. We already, got 2 people looking at proposals to add, 20 feet of riprap in that area to try to stop that wave action and break it out further and protect that area. Luckily, I got a thing in the mail from the Calvert Soil Conservation about their yearly report. And I just happened to reading through that last night, and I saw where they did Breezy Point, and they've been doing a lot more shoreline protection and erosion through the Calvert Soil Conservation Program. So I contacted them today. And actually the Ryan, I've worked with him before, other things, he lives right in Chesapeake Beach. And he says he walks the boardwalk frequently and knows exactly what I was talking about. So I've got them coming out to see. I know there'd be a lot more price-wise. They have an onboard engineer. They have a good working relationship with MDE. So I'm going to get them to give me a proposal. And we also asked Bayland to give us a proposal for, adding the rock, getting it through the permit process, and then having a set of specs ready to put out the bid for a contractor to add that riprap in that area. We need to spend the ARPA money by December. It has to be committed by December. So we're hoping to get this thing moving fairly quickly. I know the soil conservation in the quickest operation in the world, but I did tell the gentleman there today that we're working under, like a 3-month timeline to get this thing designed and get it ready to go out to bid. And he said he thought they could meet that timeline. So I'm hoping we can get a couple proposals. We got a proposal from Bayland, but I thought it was pretty expensive and that's one thing I'll ask the flood committee. Maybe we can email that out, their proposal and the data that they had in their compound flood plan, because they're repeating some data and look like they're charging for data that they should already have. So I need to ask them a question on that and then see what we can do to maybe get their design price down a little bit for that work.
Is
Johnny,
I just got. Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was gonna ask, where do you want that where is the proposed 20 extra feet of riprap gonna go?
It's from actually like where the breakwater comes in, the north breakwater on the boardwalk there, when you turn
Right.
at your house and Garrett's house, where that breakwater hits the beach there, from there up to 7th Street.
I
Yeah,
got
all
you.
the way up to 7th Street there, yeah. That's where we lost, where the new railing, where we lost the railing at under the storm a
Yes.
couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah, 'cause that's sewer line there, and that's pretty exposed to.
Yeah.
I can see that thing one of these days, if we don't put some protection there, getting undermined and settling and having issues, and
Yeah.
no way to get to that area to do any maintenance is a real problem.
So that there would be no recreation swimming near that area. It would all just become riprap. Is that what you're
Right.
saying? Okay.
Most of that is like it's outside the Cedo nets. It is a nice little part of the beach there now, but like right from where that sand was kind of added north of there, so it'll be turned into riprap to protect, what's there.
Mhm.
Was that the 400,000 that was mentioned a meeting or two ago?
Yes, that is the 400,000 is kind of earmarked for that project. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I got that estimate. We had Disson in June, who was a company who put in the breakwaters. We got a linear foot price from them just to get a ballpark budget, and that would include the engineering and the work.
Geez, how did they do that, Gary? Did they bring a barge up as far as they can and then just, drop the stone? Is that how
Yep.
they do it?
That's what they did on the breakwaters. They had to wait for high tide. They bring a big barge up with as much rock as they can get on it. And they had a smaller barge. And what they have is a long reach excavator. It's got like a 60-foot reach on it. So he can reach over. And what they had to do to get that close to shore before, they'd actually move. They'd have two of them there. They'd have one sitting on a barge out in the water working. He'd be scooping it off the barge and then transferring it. And they'd have another one sitting maybe on a mat in the water, and then he'd pick it up and then he'd put it on there and place it along the beach there. So they're like transferring it from one to the other. One can't. That's why if you notice when you walk the boardwalk where the concrete ramps are, they were put in so you can get an excavator through that entrance out on the beach if we had to. And then we've taken one out when we did the dredging, and they'll bring in wooden 10 by 10 mats, probably 20 by 20, and pick them up and set them out in the water. And then they'll take the machine and sit on top of the mat and work off of the wooden mats actually in the water. The biggest hurdle with this whole job, it will MDE, not really getting it permitted, but it takes so much time to get it to MDE and get them to approve it or not approve it, or the permit process and the regulations they put on doing the work. I'm not, we talked a little bit with Bayland about that, but I'm not sure. And the soil conservation, they did Breezy Point Beach, and they did a couple other projects recently so they're familiar with working with MDE. So we would use their expertise in there. Hopefully they would have some ends on who to talk to kind of get the thing moving. So, but that's on those two projects. That's all I really had new business wise that I can think of.
Anybody else have anything they want to bring up or any questions they want to ask? clarifications? Sorry.
If
we missed-
anybody wants to, we'll be out about 9 p.m., 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Waypro guys supposed to meet at my shop, so about 9:15, 9:30 or so. If anybody, it's not too cold out, anybody wants to tag along, we'll probably be in the 7th and 9th Street area, looking at those two for how to and ease and recommendations for Waypro and installation of them.
Sounds good.
Sounds good, yeah. Well,
I think that's it, Donnie. I think we've done it.
Sounds good. As always, appreciate all your help.
Donnie,
Yes,
did
sir.
you say you're gonna meet at your shop at 9?
Yeah, we'll be at the shop at 9. That's what the rep's supposed to be meeting me there at 9 o'clock. So if
Okay.
you wanna meet there, that's great. And then we're just gonna go to 9th Street and go to 7th Street. And unfortunately, we can't pump it down so you can see inside the pipe. I got a couple pictures at my shop, old pictures where the tide was down back in the winter where we could look at, and I'm gonna try to get his expertise and maybe even some. That might be a project that where they have contractors that have installed these valves up and down the East Coast, because he said he's getting calls on a daily basis because of the tidal stuff that's going on all up and down the East Coast. They're probably busier now than they've ever been, but he might have some contacts with contractors in the area that have installed these before or whatever. So we're kind of looking for that. And then, what he thinks and whether the sand, like Gary had his questions, asked all those kind of questions to the rep tomorrow when it comes out.
Yeah, the sand and silt issue is a good one.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think this is almost like a two-phase contract too, because you got to have a contractor that can put in the pump station, which is nothing too extraordinary, but the cutting the pipe and installing this check valve is a little bit because of the water. You're working, against the tide, against the water. You're going to need a marine type, somebody who's used to working around the bay and, have to drive in sheet piling and maybe pump it out and shoring and everything else. So he's right in South Carolina, so I'm hoping he has some guys he said they've been getting calls from every city on the coast recently because it's going on everywhere.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
All righty. Thanks.
All right.
everybody.
Appreciate everybody showing up. Thanks all again for everybody's help, and look forward to these projects keep rolling.
I'll see you all next month. Yep. Bye-bye.
okay, bye-bye.